So welcome to the Vibrant Life Community. This is the official podcast of the Vibrant Life Community where I take my members from stressed and depressed to abundant energy and joy on demand using a process that removes the emotional triggers preventing us from being our most present, empathic, and thriving selves. We do this by going past the surface clutter of emotions and tapping into our core where joy and boundless energy await. So this week, we're talking about healthy boundaries for high achievers. And this is such an important topic because it's high, especially for high achievers, because we tend to want to go above and beyond, or we do go above and beyond in all aspects of life. And that can lead to lack of boundaries sometimes. So this week we're talking about boundaries with our time, boundaries with relationships, and tonight we're talking about spiritual boundaries. And let me just quickly reference my thing. So we're talking about relationships, time, money, spiritual, and then tomorrow we're going to be talking about space. So healthy boundaries is just one small piece of the puzzle that is, this life of fulfillment that I help my clients to create as they go through the process. And so if you're somebody who knows that you might have a struggle or a challenge with healthy boundaries, then just let us know in the comments. And if you have a specific question, I can help you with that tonight in relation to spiritual boundaries. And if you don't know if this is an issue for you, then hopefully you'll find out through this episode, and you can always reach out to me after, and we can have a little bit of a conversation to get some clarity on that. So just let's start out by letting me know where are you coming in from, where you tuning in from, and say hello. Let us know if you can see or hear okay. So, hey, Tess. So good to see you here. All right, and you guys, at the end, we're going to switch over to a private Zoom call for Inner Circle members. So Tess is invited to that, and we'll do some Q&A and just expand on the conversation a bit more for a couple minutes. So let's start off with spiritual boundaries, talking about what we allow into our spiritual world. The spiritual world, everybody, listening to this has somewhat of a different perception of what that is. And really it's what surrounds our source, and some people will call that God. Some people, everybody's got different names for that. But what I'm talking about is a universal definition of spirituality, something that can really apply to everybody, regardless of your affiliation or religion. All right. So, and have a pen and paper out, because these are heavy, heavy, deep questions that you may want to take a week to answer and to really elaborate on your answer, because this reflection is going to help you to create these boundaries. I'm not telling you, what to do. I'm not really giving you advice with this topic. I'm really, helping you to build awareness, and that awareness is going to help you to guide where you take this and guide how you build these boundaries. And let's quickly define what exactly boundaries are. And those boundaries, regardless of what area they're in, the definition is going to be the same across the board. And it's, what do you let in and what do you keep out or let out? What comes into your world and what stays out of your world? Those are the boundaries. And those are, it comes down to, what do you say yes to and what do you say no to? We just got fuzzy for a second. Hello. Sorry, this camera. All right. So what do you say yes to and what do you say no to? So think about what that how that relates to spiritual boundaries. All right, so what do you allow into your spiritual world? All right, so think about what exactly is your spiritual world, and think about what do you allow into that, and what do you say no to? What do you say yes to, and what do you say no to? So just write that down and feel free to comment, post anything in the comments that you want to share with us to elaborate on, or if you want some feedback on. And also think about who influences your spiritual beliefs. And this is a really important one. Some people have thought about this already. I know the first time that I was asked this question, it just totally, changed my world, because I had never thought about it before. And I realized how important it was who influences your spiritual world. There are a lot of people who try to influence that, and there's tremendous power in that. Your spiritual world is so sacred and so vulnerable that, there are a lot of people who try to get into that and influence that, and it can even turn into manipulation. So let's look at who influences your spiritual beliefs, and do you feel any pressure from them? Have you ever felt any pressure from the people that influence your spiritual world? And it could be people in the media. It could be people, like if you go to church, it could be people at church. It could be friends or family. So this is going to sound a little bizarre. When I was about 16, I went to Dominican Republic for a mission trip, and I went to this ghetto in Dominican Republic, and I was a dental hygienist. Really, at 16, I was a dental hygienist. I would clean teeth, pull teeth, suture gums, stuff like that. And they were a Christian organization. And one day after work, I was just hanging out with the owner of the organization. And before I knew it, all of a sudden, this group surrounded me. They circled me, and they just started chanting, or they asked me if I took Jesus into my heart. And everything was in Spanish, and they tried to do some English, but it was really confusing and very intense. And they started chanting around me and circling me, saying Gloria Jesus, Gloria Jesus. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm 16 years old, and it was this just crazy thing. And so I had to set up some spiritual boundaries with that, and just be true to myself and be honest with what really am I comfortable with, and what are my actual beliefs, and what am I willing to be influenced by. So that was a really interesting lesson to learn early on. So that's something to just be mindful of. Do you ever feel any pressure from the spiritual influencers in your life? And what do you think they would think? What would they think if you decided not to believe something that they believed? How open are they to your personal belief systems? That's something really important too. A lot of people are very open. It's hey, this is something to think about, and you can believe whatever you want, but I'm going to give you this. And then other people are more this is the only way there is. If you don't believe this, you are going to hell, or you are an evil person if you don't believe this. So those are some things to reflect on when you're looking at who are your spiritual influencers at the moment. And then the next one is a different element of spirituality. That what I was just talking about was organized or communal spirituality. This next thing that I want to talk about is more internal spirituality. Okay. And that's what I posted before about empathy. And empathy is the gateway between your spirit and the rest of the world. It's the bridge. between your spirit and the rest of the world. And so when somebody has a lot of empathy, they cross a barrier where, like a spiritual barrier, where they can experience what another person is experiencing. And a lot of empaths, especially where their empathy is very strong and they haven't learned yet how to manage that, they experience it so strongly that they accidentally take it on themselves. And they take it on themselves because of habit, because that's like, it's like how you do anything is how you do everything. So they're just used to feeling like they need to do everything themselves. So they unintentionally take on the pain and the emotional states of other people, just because that's their pattern, that's their habit. And that's a lack of boundaries if you experience that. So you can have some boundaries that say, I can experience this and I can have a deep understanding of what this person is going through, and I can have tremendous compassion, but I'm not going to take it on. It's not my responsibility. I believe in their power and their strength, and I will let them have this challenge, this gift that is their pain and their struggle, and I'm going to hold space for them. That's the boundary I'm setting right now, is I'm holding space for that instead of taking it on as my problem. Like, I'm not going to try to fix that problem because that's not mine to fix, it's theirs to fix, but I'm going to hold space for that and hold a loving space that allows them to feel safe while they're processing and while they're healing. So that's more of an internal spiritual boundary. Now, another type of spiritual boundary goes a little bit further beyond that. And this is something that not everybody talks about, and I don't know how many of you can relate to it. I think more people can relate than I probably think. But I hear a lot of people talk, especially like the highly intuitive, highly empathic people, talk about like spirits will come to them, or they'll have these like just really bizarre spiritual or intuitive experiences that make them uncomfortable, and wonder what to do about it, because they can be a little freaky sometimes, or maybe they're just like not into that. They're impacting the world in a way that really isn't relevant to these spiritual experiences. And so what I always tell them is, if there's a spirit who's coming to you because they want to channel through you, they want to channel their message through you, you have the right and really the responsibility to give consent or not consent. And you can say, no, sorry, I don't want this role. This isn't really the role that I want to take on right now, maybe some other time, but I've got this role, and so thank you, but no thank you. Or you can just say no, whatever feels more powerful for you. So those are 3 types of spiritual boundaries that are really important to set, especially if you're highly empathic. And like I said before, empaths tend to have very weak boundaries spiritually, and because of that, tend to get very drained. And then it's really hard to make the impact we want to make when we're drained. Does that make sense? So we're going to take some questions over in the private Zoom chat. And like I said before, this boundaries thing is so important for high achieving business owners, because we tend to have weak boundaries as we want to just go above and beyond everywhere. And this is like it's, even though it's so big, it's like one small aspect to that bigger picture. So if you want more, and you want that bigger picture, then just let me know and I can show you how to go about doing that. And we're going to switch it over now to the Zoom chat. So let me just pull that up here. And so in the Zoom chat for the inner circle, we're going to just continue the conversation. And if there are any questions about like what is a spiritual boundary, or how do I know if I'm holding spiritual boundaries, then you can feel free to ask those there. So hold on a second. Okay. Here you go. So feel free to come on over in there and we'll see you in a minute. All right, and I'm going to close this video now. All right, bye guys. Thank you so much for joining.